A nation rises from its ashes, but not without cost. At dusk on October 29, 1923, as cannon fire cracked across Ankara, crowds gathered in muddy streets. The Ottoman Empire, an empire that had once stretched across continents, was no more. In its place, a fragile new republic was about to be born. But no one knew whether it would live or die in its infancy. What happens when a country must reinvent itself from the ground up? That was the gamble Mustafa Kemal Atatürk was about to take. He believed Turkey must break with its past utterly and race toward the future. But powerful forces, religion, tradition, foreign powers, conservative elites were already lining up to resist. Would he succeed, or be crushed under the weight of reaction? This is the story of modernization, of ambition, friction, tragedy and triumph. And at its heart is one man who dared to remake a nation. In 1918, after 4 years of World War I, the Ottoman Empire lay shattered. Foreign armies occupied its lands, internal rebellions threatened its heart. The Allies were carving the remains of the empire into mandates, protectorates, colonies. Mustafa Kemal had already made a name for himself at Gallipoli, commanding, organizing, inspiring soldiers. But now, with the empire's collapse, the fight turned inward. Could a modern nation be built from ruins? In 1919 he launched the Turkish War of Independence, rejecting partition by foreign powers, calling on people across Anatolia to resist. Ankara, far from Istanbul's dynastic intrigues, became the hub of resistance. By 1922 the sultanate was abolished. The last Ottoman caliph fled. The old imperial order was collapsing by degrees. By late 1923, Atatürk and his allies declared the Republic of Turkey. He became its first president. But a nation is not built by declaration alone. The deeper fight was ahead, to remake Turkey's laws, religion, language, identity. He faced a classic dilemma: move fast enough to prevent reversal, yet cautious enough to manage backlash. Many societies that tried radical change at a sprint collapsed under resistance. Atatürk chose a middle path, a relentless push, but one that paced itself. From day one, he struck where power was greatest: the state, the law, religion. He abolished the sultanate on November 1, 1922. Then he abolished the caliphate on March 3, 1924. The caliphate was the symbolic heart of the old Islamic Ottoman order. Removing it was dangerous, provocative. Next came dismantling religious courts and the Sharia legal system. They were replaced with European law codes. New civil, penal, commercial codes based on Swiss, Italian, and German models were introduced. Polygamy was ended. Marriage and divorce became civil matters. He decreed that titles and honorifics like Pasha, Effendi, Hoca, Bey should be banned. Every citizen must adopt a surname, thanks to the surname law of 1934. He reshaped the very identity of the citizen, untethered from the aristocracy, religion, lineage. These moves enraged conservative religious leaders and traditional elites. They cried betrayal, secularism, irreligion. But Atatürk would not retreat. A revolution in law is one thing. But a deeper revolution was needed in how people think, read, and speak. For centuries, Ottoman Turkish had used an Arabic-based script and included many Persian and Arabic words. It was hard, arcane, often accessible only to elites. In 1928, the Latin alphabet was adopted. Overnight, literate Turks had to relearn to read and write in a new script. Newspapers, signs, textbooks all converted to the Latin script. He also pushed for unification of education. Religious schools were closed or brought under state control. The Ministry of Education centralized control over all schooling. He believed public education was the key to social transformation. From 1923 to 1938, the number of primary school students rose dramatically. Middle schools expanded, high schools multiplied. He also introduced coeducation and expanded educational access to girls, no longer a domain reserved for male elites. The effect: In one generation, Turkey went from a society in which most citizens were illiterate and excluded, to one where reading, science, secular education became part of daily life. Modernization is not only law and schools, it must reach the streets, the clothes, the customs. Ataturk banned the fez in 1925 with the hat law. Men were encouraged and sometimes forced to wear Western-style hats. Women's veils and traditional head coverings were discouraged, though changes here were more gradual. He banned dervish orders and Sufi lodges, closed tombs used as worship centers. He replaced the Islamic calendar with the Gregorian calendar. He changed the weekend to include Sunday, adopted Western timekeeping, measurement systems, and the International Numeric System. These were sweeping cultural changes. Imagine your everyday world, how you dress, greet, mark time, all flipped. It created tension. Older generations felt lost in a rush of unfamiliar norms. If modern Turkey was going to succeed, Ataturk believed women must be part of it, not excluded. He granted women the right to vote in municipal elections as early as 1930, then full voting rights in 1934. He elevated the status of women legally, equal rights in marriage, inheritance, education, public life. In a deeply patriarchal, conservative society, this was revolutionary. Many resisted. But change took hold. Women joined professions, became teachers, lawyers, doctors, and political participants. Their presence began to reshape Turkish identity from the inside out. Legal codes, culture, education, these are the soft infrastructure of a nation. But a modern state also needs hard infrastructure: factories, roads, railways, industry. Ataturk and his government pushed state-led industrialization, establishing textile factories, rail lines, power plants, and modern industries. He encouraged private enterprise, investment, and foreign technical expertise, but always under state guidance. Agrarian reforms sought to improve productivity in agriculture, an important sector in Turkey. Land surveys, encouragement of modern farming techniques, irrigation projects, these were started. The aim was to break dependency on imports and dependence on foreign powers. He also pursued a foreign policy that asserted independence yet sought peaceful cooperation. His famous motto, "Peace at home, peace in the world," these projects required money, manpower, and sustained political control. No radical transformation passes without backlash. Religious conservatives saw secularization and legal changes as attacks on Islam, traditional elites, landowners. Old bureaucrats felt marginalized or threatened. Rural areas were slower to change. Some rebellions cropped up. Ataturk responded with firmness, suppressing religious uprisings, limiting opposition parties, centralizing authority. Critics later accused him of authoritarianism. Language change alone created generations who could not read Ottoman-era documents. Suddenly, much of the past became inaccessible to average citizens. This break was both liberating and traumatic. The economic burden was heavy. Turkey was poor, war-torn, lacking capital and infrastructure. Rapid projects drained resources. Many reforms had to be paced. Some plans were delayed or scaled back. Yet Ataturk held firm. He shifted gradually but persistently. As one historian put it, his method was not to shock the system entirely at once, but to incrementally modernize so the society would adapt rather than recoil. By the time Ataturk died in 1938, Turkey looked very different than in 1923. The legal system was secular, equal, modern. The alphabet and language shift had created a new literate populace. Education had expanded greatly. Women were part of public life. State industry and infrastructure had begun to take shape. The Turkish citizen had a new identity: secular, nationalist, forward-looking. Ataturk's legacy would carry Turkey into its next century. Modern Turkey still grapples with balancing secularism and religion, modernity and tradition, freedom and state control. But the foundation he laid still shapes every debate in the country. When Turkey marked 100 years in 2023, many still saw Ataturk's reforms as the starting point of the Turkey that exists today, a secular republic, a nation that turned westward in law, script, governance. But the journey is ongoing. Let's pause and imagine a young woman in a small Anatolian village in 1925. She has to walk miles to attend the new state school. Her mother worries, should she wear a headscarf or not? Her father is torn, tradition versus opportunity. She learns to read with the new alphabet, and years later becomes a teacher, helping other girls get education. An imam in a century-old mosque sees his religious courts closed, his authority diminished. He resists and whispers, in private. Some followers resist. He is arrested, his lodge shut. Peace is maintained, but resentment lingers. A civil servant steeped in Ottoman bureaucracy must relearn laws, scripts, systems. He loses influence, but adapts to survive. He becomes a bridge between old and new. A peasant in the hills hears of city factories, power lines, railroads. He cannot see them. He wonders if the fuss is for the elites. Over time, roads reach his region, schools open. His children go to classes. They speak a new script, read new books. These personal fates reflect the deeper transformation. It is a social overhaul, not only of institutions, but of minds, habits, relationships. That is why modernization is the hardest journey. Change must root itself in the soil of everyday life. Ataturk's modernization was not flawless. It had trade-offs, tensions, contradictions. What worked? He broke the hold of religion as law, enabling equal rights under secular codes. Education and literacy exploded. A more informed populace could engage modern life. Legal protections empowered women and minorities. The new identity of Turkish citizen unified a fragmented society. Factories, infrastructure, and industry became possible where before there was only deprivation. But what was contested? The top-down style, limiting opposition, suppressing dissent. Some felt the reforms disrespected religion, tradition, local customs. The rapid change created cultural rupture. Many older texts, religious works, Ottoman heritage became inaccessible. Economic constraints slowed full implementation. Rural regions lagged behind. Tension remained between secularism and religious identity, a tension still alive in Turkey today. Indeed, modern Turkey still debates Ataturk's legacy. How far should secularism go? Should religion have a public role? How to reconcile identity, history, pluralism? The story he began is not finished. Imagine an alternate path. Suppose the resistance had overwhelmed him. Suppose religious backlash had toppled the reforms. Suppose military coups or foreign interference had reversed the changes. Turkey might have re-entered religious rule, remained backward, fragmented, dominated by external powers. In such a scenario, the entire Middle East dynamics shift. The idea that a Muslim country could modernize and secularize might have been dismissed. The model Ataturk offered, a bridge between tradition and modern Western norms, would have been discredited. But he succeeded. Not perfectly, not fully, but enough to establish a trajectory. And that trajectory became Turkey's path forward. So here's the moral. Real transformation, whether of a person, a community, or a nation, is not about overnight miracles. It's about vision, courage, and relentless work over time. Ataturk didn't just fight wars, he fought ideas, habits, centuries of structure. Change demands dismantling old power, building new systems, and persuading minds. But change without justice, without adaptation to human needs, will breed backlash. The lasting reforms are those planted both in institutions and in daily life. If we look to our own challenges, education, inequality, culture, governance, we can see echoes of Ataturk's trial. We can ask, do we aim for superficial reform or deep foundational change? Do we drive with force or persuade? Do we build for tomorrow or cling to yesterday? If this story inspired you or forced you to rethink something, hit the like button. Share it with someone who loves history or politics. Comment below, what do you think was Ataturk's boldest act? Which of his reforms would be hardest to do today in your country? And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss more stories like this. Let's bring history alive together.